All right. Welcome everybody to the Thursday, August 5th, 2021 special meeting of the, or this is regular meeting, excuse me, of the Humboldt County Planning Commission. And as usual, in accordance with Executive Order N-29-20, the Planning Commission will be meeting virtually, be held virtually. Go on the county website, get instructions on how to join us. With that, call the meeting to order and ask you to join me in a salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm trying to get on sync with, you threw us all off sync, Melanie. All right. Commissioners present, Laura.
I couldn't hear you very well, sorry.
Alan Bongio.
Present.
Thomas Mulder. Noah Levy.
Here.
Mike Newman.
Present.
Peggy O'Neill.
Here.
Brian Mitchell.
Present.
Melanie McCaver.
Here.
Okay. Looks like we have a quorum. I'm sure Thomas will be joining us. Director, do we have some agenda modifications?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Some are shown on the agenda. Some are things we're going to be asking for. I'm going to go through them, and then when we come to the items, we can modify the agenda accordingly. But under E, consent agenda, item number 1 is shown as being continued on the face of the agenda. There is no change to that. Item number 3, the old Riceland holding. There is an email in your supplementals that came in today where the applicant is asking for a continuance. And so we will want to remove that from consent and continue that.
Do you know what you want to continue it to?
To a date uncertain.
Okay.
Item number 6, Sperry Conditional Use Permit. This is also on consent. We would also like to continue this to a date uncertain. And then item number 7 is shown as being continued. Item 8 is being shown as being continued. Item number 9, 10, and 11. 9 and 10 are both shown as, with a recommendation. We're asking for those to be continued to a date uncertain. The property ownership has recently changed, and so that's got to be sorted out. So those we'll want to remove those from consent and continue those to a date uncertain. 12 and 13 are both shown as being continued to a date uncertain. Then one of the things that I would like to do with the chair and the commission's consideration is that there probably will be a number of items that are removed from consent. And currently the way the agenda is structured is that there will be old business, which is Singular Wireless, and then PWM, and then the items pulled from consent and new public hearings. I'd like to move item G to after H so that we would have the public hearing on the coastal trail and the Stott billboard before we go to items removed from consent.
Yes, I was going to suggest the same thing on that last point.
All right. So.
And then with the chair's indulgence, there are a number of supplementals that have been provided to the commission. One other continuance, I'm sorry, I missed this. We are asking that the modifications to the CCLUO, this is item number 3 under old business, be continued to August 19th. And what we would like to do is bring back the RRR provisions and the community support facility setback provisions only. And then we need some time, additional time to work on the propagation area and the lighting. And we will continue those to a date uncertain.
That's fine with me.
I'm just thoroughly confused now, so I'll just go with the flow. I couldn't keep up with all that.
You don't have to organize all this. You're lucky. All right. So bear with me as we go through the consent agenda when we get to it. But before that, we have public comment. So this is the time when anybody in the audience can speak about anything that is not on tonight's agenda. So let's see if we have anybody. There we go. And of course, there's one hand up, and I know that hand. Go ahead, Ken.
Hello, Ken Sawatsky. I wanted to address some things that transpired during your last meeting. I really appreciate you folks going to county council for answers. Of course, I'm not aware of who the county councilor is today. Allegedly, it may be Amanda Freeman. I don't know. We aren't aware of who's there. We don't have access to who's on your screen. So it's always nice to know who the players are. At last meeting, I believe Brian Mitchell at approximately minute 49 or 50 into the meeting went ahead and asked the question of county council. I think Cliff Johnson, who was handling the meeting at that time, said he would answer that legal question. And that is improper. If you have somebody from staff or somebody from your board who asks a legal question of county council, it's imperative that you get an answer from a legal professional. The lawyers have a big objection to it, and I do. You take your legal advice from legal counsel only. And if you don't get the answer you want, it was kind of unfortunate that Cliff answered this, whether correctly or not. It wasn't a legal opinion or couldn't have legally been. There wasn't a follow-up question asking county council the questions. The other thing being regarding legal issues, and we're dealing in quite a bit of those for some very specific reasons here. I highly recommend that if you have any question at all, you ask county council. If county council says, I will get back to you with a memo, and my understanding is we're to have a memo from last meeting. I don't know if that's presented to you or not. The public should have every right to see a memo if it was presented. That's transparency, and it's not something that can be kept from the public, in my opinion. But basically, you should always make sure that your county council is the one that you deal with on that. And if you can't, this person cannot give you an answer, and your project is dependent upon an answer, you're asking the question for a region or multiple projects, you should continue those things. I believe would be wise, not giving you legal advice, but just common sense advice. Continue those things until you have the legal questions answered from your county council's office and not from other staff members. My opinion and many people's opinion out there, the county is getting in a lot of trouble by having non-legal experts answer legal questions. And you have multiple things in litigation at this time, which could cost the county a lot of money. And we don't want to have further ones because of getting legal opinions from non-legal experts. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on legal opinions today.
Thank you, Kent. Next caller, Madeline DeLapp.
Hi, good evening, commissioners. I would just like to point out, if I can, based on all of the modifications to the agenda tonight, that either 3 out of 3 or 4 out of 4 of the remaining cultivation projects that are going to be heard tonight that are on the consent calendar are all pre-existing operations that are being brought into compliance with state and county laws. In essence, what we've been dealing with over the last 4 years is 10, 15, 20, 30 years of backlog bringing businesses into compliance. And the projects that are before you today have all been thoroughly vetted by county staff and vetted based on applicable environmental laws that were in place at the time that those projects were applied for. I ask you to judge these projects based on existing laws, not on the unvetted desires of a small group of people. And I just want to remind everybody, which you're very, very aware of, that we are already weeks behind schedule on projects because of projects being pulled. You're dealing with special meetings and to accommodate all of this public interest. And so I really, again, just ask you to look at and consider these projects based on the laws that they were applied for at the time that they were applied for. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who wishes to speak on public comment? Go ahead, 7108. Go ahead,
Hi.
7108.
This is Bonnie Blackberry, who I have raised my hand to have some items pulled and have commented on various ones. And I just want to say, I'm not doing this to slow anything down. I'm doing it because I'm really concerned about what's happening. And when these ones are pulled off of the consent calendar, if everything was hunky-dory, you wouldn't have to spend a bunch of time going over and trying to figure stuff out and dealing with these inconsistencies and stuff. So I just want to let you know I have genuine concerns that I'm raising. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Anybody else who wishes to speak on public comment? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and come back to the commission. We're going to go through the consent. Bear with me, it's going to be a little bit slow and cumbersome. There's a whole lot of them that have been continued. The ones that are continued on, that say to be continued, that were on the printing, those will go on the consent when we have a vote. But then there's some additional ones that were pulled tonight. So we'll deal with those individually or as a group if it's okay with the director. Yeah, as a group when we. So first of all, I'm going to go through on the ones that aren't being pulled and see if they're going to be held for public hearing or if they'll be part of our consent vote. So the first one that has not been pulled and is on the consent calendar is Eco Green Grow LLC Conditional Use Permit, the second one. And it's in the Willow Creek area. Is there anybody who wishes to have that item pulled? Seeing a hand, we will pull that from consent. Next item is item number 3, Hold Rights and Holding Company, and that one is to be.
I want that pulled.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Oh, okay, sorry.
And that was going to be pulled, so we'll come back to that one and pull and do all of the ones that are going to be pulled together. That's why I asked you that.
Yep, perfect.
A minute ago. Okay, so item number 4. LSK Art LLC Conditional Use Permit in the Showers Mountain Pilot Ridge area. Does anybody wish to have this item pulled? Seeing a hand, this one will be pulled. Okay. The next one is been asked to be pulled, so we'll skip over that one. And the next one also has been asked to be pulled. So item number 7, Green Tech Industries Conditional Use Permit in the Redway area. Does anybody wish to have this one pulled?
That's a continuance
I'm
to
sorry.
date uncertain.
I missed my highlight on that one. I apologize. That one's continued. 8 and 9 are both being pulled. Or continued, I should say.
Actually, 8 is a date uncertain.
Yeah.
And 9 would be something that we need to talk about, right? 9, 10, 11.
9 and 10 need to be pulled. Well, I'm going to come back and get all of them in one group.
Right.
I
But
mean, we could do
number 8 is published as continued.
as continued, so that'll just go on the consent. All right. So that brings us to item number 11, which is continued. And 12 and 13 are both continued on the agenda. 14, is there anybody who wishes to have item number 14 pulled? McKinleyville, Murray Road, LLC, final map subdivision, McKinleyville area. Hand came up, so that'll be pulled. And item number 15, Bigfoot Cannabis Company, LLC, conditional use permit in the Willow Creek area. Anybody care to have this one pulled? Seeing none, I will leave that one on consent. And that is all the items that were on the consent calendar tonight. So I'm going to go. What I would ask is that we take a vote on all the items that were published as being continued and were left okay on the consent. So I'm going to go through those. It's going to take a second, but these are the items that'll be on this first consent vote. And then we'll do all the ones that were pulled tonight as a second vote, so we can keep it kind of clear. So the first item that's going to be on the consent calendar vote is item number 1, Christopher Cameron conditional use permit. Item number 2 is going to be item number 5, Lassick Farms LLC conditional use permit in the Blocksburg area.
I'm sorry. What's happening with number 4?
Number 4 was pulled by audience, public.
Okay, thank you.
Item number 7 is the next item, Green Tech Industries conditional use permit in Redway area. Item number 8 is the Bear Creek Gardens LLC conditional use permit in the Densmore area. Item number 11, the Kenneth Holland conditional use permit in Whitethorn. Item number 12, Emerald Flower Farms special permit in the Shelter Cove area. Item number 13, Emerald Flower Farms special permit in the Shelter Cove area. And item number 15 being the last one, Bigfoot Cannabis Company, LLC, conditional use permit. Could I get a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd love to move the items you just listed for us on the consent calendar.
And I'll second that.
Thank you, Mike.
Can I just confirm that, did we mean to put number 15, Bigfoot Cannabis, on that? Because this is all the ones that are being continued to a date uncertain from the
that one was 15. There was no opposition.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So that's why it's on.
Okay, sure.
11, 12, and are continued.
Yeah, yes. 12 and 13, is that what you're asking? 12 and 13 were asked to be continued.
11, 12, and 13, I think.
Did I not?
Well,
as on the consent, they're continued date uncertain.
that's
Yeah, but that, if they were on the ones we're doing now are the ones that were printed on our agenda as being continued. Then there's 3, I think, that we're gonna go back and pick up that are continued to dates uncertain. So these don't include those ones that the director pulled tonight. These are all the ones that were on the agenda, agendized as being pulled, or items that did not get pulled from the consent.
And just so I'm clear, is it all of them except the last one that we're considering right now? All of them except the Bigfoot Cannabis Company are being continued to a date uncertain. That one Bigfoot Cannabis is being approved, correct?
That one's being approved.
Yeah.
That's, yes,
Yeah.
what you were asking is correct. But it's on, they're all on the consent.
Are you there?
Okay. That clarifies the question for me. Thank you.
It's actually 2 and 15, right?
No, I'm trying to get, I'm in the ball.
No, 2 was pulled.
2 was pulled by the public.
2 was pulled by
Really?
the public. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm really trying to make this as simple as I can, guys. But I must not have did a very good job of it.
No, I'm clear. I would encourage, so we had a motion and a second. Can we vote on that motion?
Yes, Laura, vote please, roll call.
Alan Bongio,
Yes.
Thomas Mulder, I was out.
No, I'm
Noah
here.
Levy. Oh,
I'm
Thomas.
present. I'm present. My link was bad earlier. I'm present.
Okay, and what is your vote?
Yes.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
Mike Newman,
Yes.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell,
Yes.
Melanie McCaver.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimous. Okay, now I'm going to go through and we're going to pull the ones that were continued to either a date specific or a date uncertain. Okay, so the first one of those is item number 3, Old Bryceland Holdings Company, LLC, conditional use permit in the Honeydew area. And that is to a date uncertain. The next one is item number 6, Lance Berry, conditional use permit in the Densmore area, and it is also to a date uncertain. The next one is number 9, and I didn't put to a date uncertain. This is Kenneth Holland special use permit, it's date uncertain. So it also is to a date uncertain. Thank you, Director. Item number 10, also to a date uncertain. It's the Kenneth Holland conditional use permit, a special permit in the Whitethorn area, and it's continued to a date uncertain as well. And that would be it. So I'd ask for a motion on those items to continue them to a date uncertain.
I'll motion to move items 3, 6, 9, and 10 to a date uncertain.
Thank you, Melanie.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask Laura for a roll call vote, please.
Alan Bongio,
Yes.
Thomas Mulder,
Yes.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
Mike Newman,
Yes.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell,
Yes.
Melanie McCaver.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, motion carries unanimous. Thank you, everyone, for being patient with me on that. Okay, so now we're going to get to continued public hearings. Item number F. And the first one is the new singular wireless PCS special permit in the arcade area. And we'll take a staff report, please.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. Brian Millar here with Land Logistics, a project planner on this item. I've got a also brief PowerPoint, if I may.
Go ahead.
So this is AT&T project, application number 16754. If the Commission will recall that this item was introduced along with the PWM cell tower proposal, both on the north side of Foster Avenue, shown here on the aerial. These were presented to the Commission at the July 15th meeting, and the public hearing was a joint public hearing, essentially was held on both projects, staff presentations, public comment, applicant comments, and then we had direction at that from the Commission to bring both items forward for tonight for action. Just a very quick reminder, the AT&T project as submitted proposed a faux water tank design 100 feet in height, just off of on the north side of Foster Avenue, opposite James Dinge Road. And this original design had capability for co-location of up to 2 carriers. And then the applicant had indicated at the last meeting that there was a potential to add a 3rd carrier as well. At the conclusion of the hearing on July 15th, the Commission provided direction to staff on both of these projects. The AT&T project, our understanding was there was non-support for that project, and so staff has provided, as part of your staff report packet, a resolution that would provide for denial of the project. I will note that AT&T has, just at the start of this week, on August 2nd, had provided a letter as well as modified design plan for their project, indicating that they would have an ability to provide for up to 4 wireless carriers in a faux water tank design. If that tank design could be modified or approved, accepted, that would increase the height from 100 feet up to 120 feet. And the Commission has a copy of that document in your packet. I will note that the staff recommendation that the resolution is still for denial of this project based on the previous Commission discussion and direction. I'll also note that there's a fair amount of correspondence on this email, and as well as some additional comments from the public in support of the AT&T project. You have as part of your packet. And that's the conclusion of staff's presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff on this before we open the public? Let's see. Mike, go ahead. You're muted, Mike.
I have a question for staff regarding the South G tower that they brought up in their email that PWM already has. And the question about that is does staff know why AT&T has not done anything about putting their signal, their signature, or whatever you may call it, on it?
I can provide a brief answer, and the applicant might be able to provide more clarity on this. But our understanding from AT&T is that they're not on that tower. Nobody is located on that tower. The reason for why AT&T might not choose to go there, I think I'd have to defer to the.
Is the applicant here to?
I believe they're certainly following the proceedings here tonight. So.
Okay, Ashley, I'll let you go ahead and answer that question for Commissioner Newman.
Thank you, Alan. So this is Ashley Smith with Epic Wireless Group, and I just want to comment on the Southgate Tower. So initially, when we submitted our alternative site analysis for our tower location, we had our RF engineers look into that tower, and unfortunately, it was too far outside of the area where our RF engineers would prefer or to provide the services. So I believe it's a little over 1.5 miles away, and therefore that tower was deemed inadequate for the co-location of AT&T's.
Go ahead, Mike. You're muted.
Well, I'm trying to unmute. So what about any information about cell tower or the what do you call it? The spread about why that would not be as good as opposed to your proposed new site?
And Mike, are you talking in regards to the G Street location?
I'm still asking that question.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so if we were to move or co-locate our antennas to the G Street location, it would not be able to provide the services that the AT&T engineers are, what the goal is for AT&T in this area. It would not provide the arcaded bottoms at that location.
So what the cost for the new tower versus locating there and at least getting some signal out and around to the Arcata, McKinleyville area?
Well, the cost to construct a new site build is much less than co-location on that tower.
So the rent is much less or much more than what it would be to construct a brand new tower and possibly get other carriers to co-locate. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. I think the benefit for the AT&T towers to construct a new site build for AT&T, of course, cost-wise, it would be more beneficial. And then also, again, we have master lease agreements with the other two carriers, T-Mobile and Verizon, and that allows them to reach out to AT&T, state that they want to co-locate on our tower, and we already have a lease agreement in place, a master lease agreement, and therefore no negotiations have to move forward. It's very simple, and co-location is preferred by those carriers to co-locate with us versus anyone else.
So how long has that other tower been up?
From what I understand, it's been up since 2017. And as of 2 weekends ago, there is no current carriers on that tower.
So you're counting on the cost of having other co-locators, including Verizon and who else, to get on your tower?
No, AT&T only constructs their facilities to provide AT&T customers in the area with services and coverage. But, you know, the benefit of this tower being constructed, it would open up discussions with Verizon and T-Mobile, as we already have that master lease agreement in place.
I'm sorry, you cut out there for a moment. With who, Mobile?
T-Mobile.
And so who else?
And Verizon. So T-Mobile bought out Sprint, so Sprint is no longer, you know, they're under the same umbrella. So there's 3 large carriers, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. So when AT&T constructs a facility, more times than not, Verizon and T-Mobile will reach out and reach out to real estate and request to co-locate their antennas on our towers.
That just sounds a master lease agreement, like collusion ahead of time. Okay, that's all for my questions at this point.
Peggy, you were trying to get my attention.
I just want to, maybe you answered this already and I missed it, but is it only economically feasible to have one tower? It would not be feasible to have two towers?
Yeah, so if that's, I don't know if that was directed towards myself, but, AT&T prefers to construct their facilities as would any other tower owner. It'd be more productive for AT&T's towers to be constructed. So again, Verizon and T-Mobile can co-locate.
So the question was, if we approve two towers, you guys would build each of you would build your tower, and it would be economically feasible for both of you to operate separate towers?
Yeah, I mean, from AT&T's standpoint, our main goal and objective is to provide service to the Arcata Bottoms area, as it is not feasible and it's been deemed infeasible to co-locate on the other tower by AT&T Legal's market management. We would be okay with the other tower being approved as well. We would still, generate revenue for AT&T with the tower being there, and we'd be providing services to AT&T customers in the area.
So what you're saying is then if your tower is not approved and the other one is approved, then AT&T is just going to bypass providing services in that area?
In this case, I believe AT&T would most likely shift their objectives to a different area, most likely still in Humboldt County, but it will most likely not be in the Arcata Bottoms area.
Melanie, you have your hand up. Melanie, are you there?
Thank you. Is the cutout occurring at your end, or is it me?
It must be your end.
Oh, okay. That's unfortunate. I was just wondering if there was an effort made to reach out. I noticed in the documents that City of Arcata was consulted, but whether there was an extra effort made to reach out to the Planning Commission that also serves as the Design Review Committee?
No, our office did not reach out to the design committee for this project.
Okay, thank you.
Thomas, I see you have your hand up.
So this is for staff. Is there a current cell phone tower policy or ordinance within the county?
No.
Okay. It's cell phone towers are kind of a pet peeve of mine personally, because they're not held to the same commercial standards, in my opinion, from the records I've followed. This personally sounds like a business ploy. There's already a cell phone tower that the community is looking at that isn't being used. So I'm kind of confused as why we're looking at approving another one in a generally close area with, I don't believe there's any huge mountains in the Arcata area, but I'm not super familiar with that.
Thank you, Thomas. Mike Newman.
So a follow-up question is basically that's what I'm seeing, as Thomas alluded to there, about a business decision and what I was looking towards there. Do we have anybody from PWM that can comment on why there has been no buddy else locating on that South G facility since it was brought up by AT&T?
I'll allow, this is going to start getting messy, but
Ainsley Parks.
go ahead, Ainsley.
And I'm sorry, I may cut out a little bit just because my internet's a little off, and I was trying to call in and unmute by phone. But anyway, the South G Street location does have interest, and there is an amendment draft in place. It's just a matter of that carrier making changes to their equipment and upgrading within the whole area. And so they started the permit process, stopped, and then are now resubmitting new equipment to restart that permit process. So I anticipate any time now to have that ready to submit for permitting.
And can you say who that is?
I don't know. It's one of the major carriers, so.
Right. Thank you.
Got two hands up.
I know, I just going back to Melanie, your hands up, and then Noah.
Thank you. Yeah, I have the same question for staff. I'm wondering, was there an effort made to reach out to the Arcata Planning Commission that also serves as design review?
It's not normal to specifically ask for comment by the Planning Commission or design review in a jurisdiction that doesn't have authority in the county. If the staff received the referral and chose to send it to the design review or planning commission, that's something that they could choose to do internally, but that's not something we would normally specifically ask for.
Yes, I understand that, but it just seems to me in this case that it would have been good to have the opinion of their review of the proposed projects, both of them, given that it is within their area. Thanks.
Noah, go ahead.
Okay, well, I mean, this is not really a question for staff. It's more just of a comment on this project, and I think we still have to get to the public comment on this item. Yeah. So I just wanted to quickly insert the fact that you know, I know that this project is coming back to us poised for a denial, but there are a couple of circumstances that have changed that make me at least feel somewhat differently about this project than I did last time. You know, the fact that they are now proposing to extend the height up to 120 feet and extend the design so that it could be capable of co-locating up to 4 carriers makes it seem in many ways like just as good a project as the PWM one.
I'm sorry, Noah. Are we asking a question or a comment?
It's a comment.
So I think it should be later.
Okay, sure. I'll withhold it save it till later.
Thanks. I didn't want to stop you. You were on a roll, but okay, we'll come back to it. Any other questions for staff before I open this up for public comment? All right. Seeing that, I'm going to open this up now for public comment. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public comment on this item and bring it back to the, oh wait, somebody just put their hand up late. Karen Saki. Go ahead, *6 to unmute.
Thank you for taking my call. My name is Karen Saki. I'm speaking for my mother, the property owner for the newly proposed AT&T site. First of all, I'd like to bring to your attention on the PMW report, there was a significant error on page 72 of 140. The property attached on this page that you've been looking at is not the Butler property, formerly the Nelson Ranch. It is set further west. Other discrepancies I noticed. After 2 years on this journey with AT&T, I feel they are dedicated to fill the gaps needed for Humboldt County, surrounding areas, and especially the Arcata Bottom. This is important to commercial fishermen as AT&T will be going up the coastline. To visitors on the beaches that don't understand, we have enormous tragedies. For visitors in the community, it was certainly impressive to see almost 700 signatures in 2 weeks from the Arcata area. Over 25 of them on the petition were from Arcata bottom ranchers and residents. Plus the many calls our family received and letters of support, and some I'm sure you've read. AT&T is here to stay. They'd like to stay for their customers. Please consider to let them finish their work and provide the latest communications offered. They're here to do this project right, not leave it standing, nor to fix it later down the road. AT&T is set to go, and I hope you welcome them to our community. Thank you, Shirley Butler and family. And if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
All right. Thank you, Karen. Anybody else from the public that wishes to speak on this item? Mike G. Go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to bring to your attention that the Zoom ID on the Legistar is not correct. So it is correct on the agenda, and it took me about 10 minutes to figure it out. So that's all I wanted to bring to your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else who would care to speak on this? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment and bring this back to the commission. Noah, you want to be the first one up?
Okay, well, thank you. And I'm sorry if my comment was a little bit out of turn, but it also was just because we were getting into talking about PWM when really we're still talking about the new singular wireless item. I just wanted to say that I understand that the item is now poised for a denial, but I feel like the facts that have come into the record should make us reconsider whether that is the preferred alternative. Like I did say a moment ago, but I'll just say again, it was pretty decisive for me that last time around the AT&T tower was going to be limited to 100 feet, I believe, and 2 carriers. Now we're talking about 120 and 4 carriers. And it does have a decided amount of public support. And it was the application that was put in first, which I think should be taken into consideration somehow, that I believe what started the whole process of both of these towers was the AT&T new singular application. So again, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or whenever it was, it didn't seem to me as strong as a proposal as the PWM proposal. I now am not sure that that's the case. And so I may want to approve this new singular wireless item. Just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Noah. I have a question for staff. My hand was up before you, Mike, so you're next. So this was put on the agenda as a denial, but is there any reason that both of these towers couldn't be approved?
There's no reason they both can't be approved. It's really a land use kind of issue, weighing whether or not the county wants 2 towers in fairly close proximity. And that's why they were brought forward together. The commission does have the ability to approve both towers.
I'm just going to make a comment that I have property that has a tower on it, and we were approached by other carriers, but then we couldn't come to agreement, and they put one less than a half mile away, just down in the same area. Ended up, cutting a better deal with another landowner or whatever. So it happens. I'm not saying that that's what should happen here. I'm just pointing it out that it's not that strange. I've seen them in areas I guess at the end of the day, it's what's going to be the best coverage for the people out there. And I can see benefit in having both towers because there are different carriers on them. And I'm assuming that as we grow here, we're going to get more carriers coming into the area. So that maybe is a possibility.
If I could just provide some insight to that, what you're saying is entirely true. One of the things that many jurisdictions struggle with is the fact that most of the carriers, as Ms. Smith discussed, really would prefer to control their own tower. And even when other carriers come on, or there seems to be difficulty in terms of reaching those co-location agreements. And so what often happens is another tower will get constructed in close proximity. And what many jurisdictions are concerned about is the proliferation of towers with single carriers. And so if what many jurisdictions do is they try to encourage co-location and require co-location once the first tower gets approved.
Okay. Thank you, Director. Mike Newman.
So hinging on that answer from the director is also, I know that the general plan in our prior meeting was talking about general directives about co-locating as much as possible and not having a proliferation of cell towers in an area, which is what, if we approve both, would do. I have several questions more about that South G Tower that is brought up by AT&T in their addendum to the Planning Commission as to why other carriers are not going to that, including Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, and whoever else. Why after 4 years, there has not been anything agreed upon to be put on. So my question to PWM is, why is that exactly? Is it the asking price is too much, or it was a bad location? And why was it agreed upon to have a tower there in the first place? So that's question one. Question two is, because of our discussion in the prior meeting, AT&T said, okay, well, we'll go higher because we have these master lease agreements with T-Mobile and Verizon. So they were only applying for 2 to begin with and a possible third if they really wanted to be low on that tower. And it just puts into question their first application about that. To me, I know that then in our other meeting, we found out that PWM had already put in for the location at Sun Valley Farms a request about building the tower there. My question on that is to the director or staff, is that true or not? And then the other questions come into play.
Director, do you want to take that?
Sure. So it's my understanding that there is a master lease agreement between PWM and Sun Valley for the Sun Valley site. There was an application that was submitted some time ago. This is not that application. This application was submitted after the AT&T application was submitted.
So is it entirely different?
I don't know that it's entirely different, no. I mean, it's the same basic concept of providing a multi-carrier tower using the fact that the old Simpson Mill buildings are very large. And one of the strategies to screening cell sites is to find large structures, large trees, and put it in the context of those to minimize the visual clutter within the area.
Okay. So I see Ainsley as a representative of PWM to probably answer my other questions.
That's fine. Is there a way to bring in Tom McMurray if he's on a phone call?
Yeah, what's the number or who is he?
The phone number is in 8935.
8935.
There he is.
Yes.
Yep. I just asked to unmute him.
*6.
Okay, Tom, you should be on.
*6. Tom, you're not coming through. By the way, Chair, who is Kathleen? She's unmuted. I'm not hearing anything.
That's Thomas, I believe.
Okay. Mulder. Okay, thank you.
Awfully cute, though.
That's not me. That's Kathleen. That the person with like a baby picture or something.
Yeah.
That's not.
Yeah, that's Brian Pilar, I believe.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Kathleen's a land logistics person. She has a later item on the agenda. So
Okay, sorry, we're getting. So, Ainsley, can you answer the question for Commissioner Newman, or Tom isn't being able to?
Okay, yeah, I can't get him on. So the primary question being about the master leases. I mean,
it was two-part about why for 4 years there still has not been anything on the South G tower that's been built. When was it completed exactly?
it was completed in 2017 and it was built with the letter of intent from a carrier and approved with that letter of intent. That carrier chose to change the equipment within the whole Humboldt area, and in the process of making that change and what that required on engineering and their end and RF, they resubmitted their proposal, and they just resubmitted that and are beginning the process of permitting through us to upgrade all those sites at one time. And so that delayed their install of equipment, but we expect it to all be in play by the beginning of the year and for permitting to start before the end of the year.
And so can we know, is it one of either T-Mobile, AT&T, or Verizon?
Yes, sir, it is.
Can we ask which one?
I'm not sure if I'm able to tell you that, but it's not AT&T. They would have told you.
It kind of hinges on the whole approval of anything here, I believe. At least in my mind.
Okay. Well, I mean, that carrier was submitted with Verizon.
Okay.
Obviously, they're not going to say it, so let's move on, keep things going. Remember, we're dealing with the AT&T tower, or the PCS, excuse me, now.
And I brought it up because AT&T brought up about the South G tower being empty.
Yeah. Anybody else have any other thoughts on this one?
I just think we should approve it. I think that we need communications and the market will figure itself out. I mean, I don't know why they can continue to have a a tower in place that nobody's using, maybe that's part of their permit. If it's not used, they have to take it down. And I would recommend that they go 120 feet. If you're going to build a tower, you should build a tower that gets the most coverage, and let's move on. I mean, if they don't have carriers, they're not going to build it in the first place. Or at least I wouldn't. But if AT&T has the carriers and the contracts in place and is ready to go, then approve it. And if they don't, they won't build it.
Thomas, you had your hand up.
Yes, so my comments back to just approve it. I'm hearing that there's already a cell phone tower that's in the process in the general close area. And that from what I'm hearing, it's just two corporations can't come to an agreement. But the corporation that is existing may be able to get one of the other carriers to join the tower. Honestly, I don't know if it's just like, hey, let's just approve it. Can we just approve every other project that comes before us and just let the market settle it out with whatever industry? That's where I'm at.
Okay. Noah.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question of staff. Given that there is not a resolution to approve TDEP, but there is a resolution to deny, if we did choose, based on some of the reasons that I mentioned and others have mentioned, if we did decide that we wanted to approve this singular project tonight, would we be able to do that, or would it be just confusing things because it was not expected to be approved tonight? In other words, can we just approve it despite the resolution in our staff report?
So, through the chair, I would, from a staff perspective, prefer not to not have an adequate resolution capturing the commission's findings for approval. And it may be that based upon some of the comments I've heard, that some specific conditions should be crafted to address co-location provisions, height provisions, the requirement to allow co-location. And those are things that should be given adequate thought and not just done completely on the fly. And if this happens to be appealed, it would be far better for the commission's action to be adequately captured in a resolution with good conditions so that the board would know what the commission's thinking is.
Okay, thank you.
Mike Newman, you got your hand up?
And based on what I'm hearing the director say, and that, with the current cell tower already built in the area, with the general plan calling for consolidation as much as possible on cell towers to eliminate blight in our pristine area here, I would so move to just table this and move it to another meeting. And we can look at the next item on the agenda as well for tabling it and moving it to a date uncertain, both of them, so that we can further look at why we're looking at another cell tower location when there's an existing one that has been approved and is on the verge of getting carriers on it.
Could I offer maybe a hybrid thought to that, Chair?
Yes.
Is it perhaps trail this item and open the public hearing on the next one and determine what the commission wants to do with that? And then depending on what the outcome of that is, to give staff direction and continue the items or act on the items as appropriate, and we can bring things back.
Okay. You good with that, Mike?
I'm fine with that.
So, okay, I'm getting It looks like everybody's okay with that. So we'll just table this for now.
Table this until after the PWM item has been heard, and then take appropriate action at that point.
So when we come back to that, will we have to go through the whole process, open up public?
In fact, no, you've closed public comment for tonight.
Okay. All right.
Can you also explain when you come back why it seems like AT&T came forward and then someone said, wait a minute, we had this application before sitting around. Maybe we need to call them up and tell them to bring it forward. At least that's what I thought I heard. Why didn't that other one move forward previously? Why was it on hold? And it was only brought back to the table. You might have explained this, but I don't remember.
No, thank you, Commissioner O'Neill. I think it is germane to the discussion. So it's really important that when we received the AT&T application, we sent them a letter indicating that the application was incomplete because they had not thoroughly evaluated all the alternative sites. And one of the sites that we in particular pointed to was the Simpson site, which is, or the Sun Valley site, which is the location of the PWM application. And so based upon that, we had a meeting with the AT&T, and I'm not sure what all transpired in the meantime, but then that application was subsequently submitted. And so that's why we brought them forward together. And the purpose of alternative analyses are to make sure that the commission in taking an action has thoroughly considered what is the best location for a cell tower, knowing that many people in the public find them less than attractive, even when they're in the stealth design.
So why wasn't the Sun Valley one considered previously or followed through with? Was it pulled by them, or was it just not approved by the commission previously?
I off the top of my head, I don't have an answer to that. I think it may have actually been denied some years ago, is my recollection. And there is a lot of concern on the part of many of the people who live in the bottoms that they feel like the general plan, when it was being adopted, had given direction that a cellular ordinance be adopted, taking into account the policies that the general plan has provided. Obviously, that wireless ordinance has not been developed to this point. It is on our work program. And it leaves the county, it leaves the commission in a little bit of a difficult place to use the policies in the general plan to weigh the importance of protecting the view shed in this location. And so the general plan, as has been mentioned, seeks to minimize the number of wireless telecommunication sites.
I just want to appeal to the commission that we make a decision sooner than later, because communication is important and it is life and death to some people when you don't have it. And if there are areas that are not covered, then we shouldn't prolong this forever. We just need to make a decision, whether it's it's the majority decision, and move forward.
Okay, Mike, put your hand back up. So.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So in answer to when PWM, I've seen letters, emails from folks that said that PWM back in 2003 or so, if I remember reading correctly, it was denied then. And that's early on. We're talking about 18 years ago, when cell phones and communications were not as dependent on these towers as they are now. There's very few people that have landlines anymore. It's more cell phones, a lot more internet, and that whole thing there. And that's why the general plan that was recently passed talked about trying to consolidate cell towers as much as possible. I don't think if it was voted on again from 2003 to now, that it would be denied if it was brought before us by itself. I thoroughly believe that because of having it by the building there, the big building, which is what most people want to see. We've seen these different cell towers around, and we know exactly what they are, and they don't always fit in. If we can get something that's close to a bigger building, as the general plan was vetted and asked for, so that's as close as what we have on a cell tower ordinance at this point, since there is no separate one. So I appeal to the rest of the commission to look at this, and I think again it's more of a business decision that has drugged this out than anything else that we have done, and I would be very reluctant to approve the AT&T tower as it is right now, and take a look at the PWM in the future as I proposed.
Melanie, you put your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to give my opinion on the matter. So I agree with Commissioner Levy that at this point, the difference between the two projects really from our point of view as a commission is negligible. And the one, the AT&T proposal does have a better aesthetic design in my opinion. I think they're both aligned with the general plan. They're both, I think, approvable. And so it really does come down to a business decision by us, which is an uncomfortable place to be.
So
I'd like to agree. I'd just like to agree with those comments and those of Commissioner Levy. Thank you.
Mike, you got your hand back up, so go ahead.
I'm just bringing it back about the existing tower that's already there in that area there. We need more information about how it would be used for not clearance, but for getting signals from all the carriers there. There's already one there. Why do we need another one in that same general area? That I really want to know.
I'm sorry, can we try to bring in Tom one more time? He called in on a number ending in 8420.
Yeah, no, we've been bouncing around on this thing too much. The director's right. We're beyond public comment. We started to table this. We're going to do that. We're going to go to the table this first one, the new singular wireless project, and we're going to go to the PWM project. He can comment then. He can say whatever he wants, and then we will finish that project, and we will come back and decide what we're going to do with this one. Maybe that'll help get some clarity. I don't know. But so where we're headed right now is we're going to table item number 1, the singular wireless PCS project, and we're
actually
now,
AT&T.
Well, AT&T. That they're on this. It says new singular wireless facility. I'm just reading what it says, Mike. And so I would take a staff report on the PWM conditional use permit special permit.
Again, Chair and members of the Commission, Brian Millar. I have a brief PowerPoint, but I think at this point I could probably just suffice just to do a very brief verbal presentation on this. So, like the AT&T project, the PWM project was before the Planning Commission back on July 15th as part of that joint review, and as at the conclusion of the public hearing, then with staff presentations, applicant presentations, public comment. The direction to staff was to return tonight and the Planning Commission indicated support for the PWM proposal. So we've drafted a resolution as part of your packet that would support an action that includes conditions of approval findings as part of that resolution. I think as noted here, we've got representatives from the applicant's team in tow there. I think there's also some email correspondence as part of your packet including from one of the neighbors who had indicated concern or opposition to the PWM project and had suggested, is there potential to possibly relocate that tower to the north or the northeast side of the warehouses on the PWM side. So that would conclude the staff presentation.
All right. Any questions from the commission or staff? Okay, seeing none, I will then open this up for public comment and let anybody who wishes to speak on the PWM project speak now. Is Mr. McMurray available to speak? Ainsley, go ahead. You have your hand up.
I believe he's on the 8420 number. If you can unmute him.
Have him raise his hand.
By pressing.
He should on his computer.
On his phone.
Press *6 on his phone and it should unmute him and he'll be able to speak. Okay, go.
Am I on?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I listened to, many of the comments on the hearing on the new singular wireless, and there's several things that are incorrect. Number one, PWM has never filed for a permit on Sun Valley, except this one. That was a U.S. cellular project. It was not denied. What occurred along the way is that Humboldt State offered a site, and 4 carriers went together, including when I was with Cal North Wireless, and we constructed the tower there. AT&T is on that tower. At no time during the previous public hearing did I say that AT&T was on the South G tower. What I said is that AT&T is on the Humboldt Hill Tower, along with 3 other carriers. So I just want to clear that up. Now, what we've done is we have followed the guidance in the general plan, and we feel we have a site that meets to the maximum extent feasible the general plan, regulations, and considerations on how to locate a tower. And what we did is we found a site and nestled in amongst the existing buildings, so it was shielded for the bottom part of the tower. We think that site is far superior to locating now, I guess, a 120-foot water tank with a tank that's 40 feet in height and 16 to 18 feet in diameter. Now, there's no way to conceal something like that. So I still would argue that we have chosen the correct site. On South G Street, that was a project that was really started by Verizon, and we had executed agreements to proceed with that site. And what has happened there, we had, the PWM have 8 sites under consideration with Verizon. And Verizon along the way, because of changing technology, and I think we all recognize that through our iPhones, continued not to build that as technology was changing. So right now on all these sites we have with Verizon, they are changing the equipment, and South G Street is one of the projects they're going forward with. Now, as far as coverage, I think we've demonstrated that South G Street has coverage, but it doesn't have the coverage that a tower in Arcata Bottom has. It's not even close. And that's because it's further to the northwest. It points up against the hill behind the high school in that area. It goes out into Gentoli Lane. It goes up 101 in what I call the channel up McKinleyville. It has a tremendous amount of coverage, and we demonstrated that through the coverage studies we had done by professional people. So I don't know what more that we can explain. There's no question that without coverage there in the Arcata Bottom, a lot of public safety and communication is going to be lost without that site. And it needs to proceed quickly because there's a lot of things coming down, including, you know, the 4G with faster speeds, more coverage. Our company through TowerCo has master lease agreements with all the carriers, including AT&T. So to delay this, I don't know how much better we can do in finding a site and being willing to proceed. Now, you have an exclusion in your conditions that if it isn't constructed within a 2-year period, then it can't be constructed. We feel it'll be constructed and carriers on it previous to that time. As far as the conditions in the staff report, we agree with everyone without any changes and accept those as written. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have, but to look at South G Street as having adequate coverage in that same general area as Arcata Bottom, it will not.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Any questions for Tom while we have him there? All right. Thank you, Tom. Any other public that wishes to speak on this matter? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment. I'm going to bring it back to the commission to deliberate. So, all right, guys, where do we want to go with this?
I think we should make a motion to approve it. I think that I'll make the motion to find the project exempt from the environmental review pursuant to section 15303 of the CEQA guidelines for new small structures, make the findings for approval of the use permit, and adopt the resolution approving the PWM incorporated conditional use permit subject to the recommended conditions.
Right. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
A motion second. Any further discussion?
I just wanted to ask, are you intending to approve both of them, or are you wanting to move forward with just this one and then going back and denying the other one?
The latter.
I'm only dealing with one at a time, and this is the one we're dealing with right now. And, you know, he made a good presentation. We need coverage in that area. I made a motion and it either passes or it fails. And then if the other one comes back, we'll make a decision at that time.
This is just on the PWM. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, Laura, I would ask for a roll call vote.
Alan Bongio,
Yes.
Thomas Mulder,
Yes.
Noah Levy,
No.
Mike Newman,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell,
No.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Melanie McCaver.
No.
Okay, motion carries 4-3. So this project is approved. So now we are going to go back and we are going to bring back up the new singular wireless PCS special permit. And we're going to discuss that one and make a motion on it. So does anybody have any thoughts on where we want to go with this one? Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, okay, well, I mean, I had come to feel that this one, the AT&T singular one, was perhaps the better one, particularly in light of learning the fact that, you know, sometimes a tower can be constructed and then sit for several years and not have, for whatever reason, a carrier locate on it. Given the fact that this is a carrier proposing to build it and locate themselves on it, given the fact that they've made it taller and more adaptable to co-locating with other carriers, I was prepared to support this one. And I am aware of the fact that we do have a policy that discourages multiple towers being approved in the same location. But I'm starting to get the sense that it's not totally up to us which ones actually get built. We have to permit them, but our permitting them doesn't make them actually get built, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm not prepared to, you know, go so far as to make a motion just yet, but I just wanted to put out there that I'm still thinking that we should approve this AT&T one as well, or at least considering the possibility that we should approve both.
Okay. Mike Newman, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And we had just heard that within 2 years that the PWM location is going to be functional with carriers on there. So I'd like to make a motion to find that the project pursuant to state CEQA guidelines, finding the project is exempt from CEQA and deny it section 15270 of CEQA guidelines, and find that project is inconsistent with the Humboldt County general plan and deny the application for the AT&T new singular wireless special permit.
All right, we have a motion to deny the AT&T project. Do we have a second for that?
I'll second it just to see a vote.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, Laura, I'll call for the vote.
Alan Fangio,
Yes.
Thomas Mulder,
Yes.
Noah Levy,
No.
Mike Newman,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell,
No.
Peggy O'Neill,
No.
Melanie McCaver,
Melanie, you're muted.
Sorry, no.
Okay, that's it. So the no vote was correct.
So the motion failed.
Motion failed, yes.
So we just need a different motion.
Okay, so does somebody want to make a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve the new singular wireless PCS special permit record numbers PLN 202016754 in the Arcata area.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I would second that. Oh.
I just have a question. Am I mistaken in remembering that the director had asked that we give them time to develop an alternative resolution for this item?
Yes.
I would ask that if the commission's inclined, you could adopt basically a resolution of intent to approve with an action to continue it with the formal resolution and set of conditions to be brought back at August 19th.
Would the motion and the second be willing to rescind their motion and second and, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And the second, okay with that? I believe that was no.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I am.
Okay. So then do you want us to make a motion that way, or we just give you direction?
Make a motion that way with a vote. Yep.
Okay. So would somebody like to make a motion to send this back?
To continue it to August 19th with the motion of intent to approve.
You heard
I'll
it?
move to continue it till August 19th with the intent to approve.
All right.
So seconded.
All right. Any discussion on that? Mike? You're muted.
Comment, sorry. I just wanted to point out again that the general plan is looking towards, consolidating cell tower in the planning of the general plan. And since we are absent of a cell tower ordinance, that we need to look towards a general plan as a guideline. So that's my comment.
I see Thomas has his hand up also.
I share some of the same comments that Commissioner Newman said. I think personally, I feel, and I don't know that it's our jurisdiction to even say that at this point in time, but there should, if the general plan does say that there should be a cell tower ordinance, that maybe it would be better not to approve multiple cell towers in the same general vicinity of until maybe that ordinance is written. But maybe that's a lot of work with all the cannabis and everything else. So I don't know. It would get passed. I mean, if you guys voted to pass it, it would pass 5-2, obviously. So, but that's it.
You want to comment on that? I think it's before it's we have to.
So I would agree with what the chair just said, is that the application is before you, and it must be found consistent with the general plan. The general plan policies become the guiding factors, and those are the things that really staff will need to find ways to support in the commission's action.
Okay.
So Brian, your hand's up. I don't know if you wanted to speak again or if that's still up from before.
Well, I guess just to speak to the concerns, the only reason we didn't vote on this tower first, thus making the second tower in the area, was but for the fact that there was no resolution in place. So I'm prepared to vote yes with a clean conscience. So thank you.
Okay. Well, we've been asked by the director to let him bring it back with the correct wording we'd like to have and such. So we have a motion and a second on that, and that's what we're going to take a vote on now. So I would ask Laura to do a roll call vote.
What are we voting on? Can you clarify that again? Are we voting on the original motion to approve it?
No.
We're voting to move it to a date.
Continue it.
Could I ask one question? When we were talking about it last meeting, was there a resolution then?
No.
All right, thank you.
So we're voting now to continue this to the August 19th meeting, upon which the director will bring back a project for us to vote on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If I could, for clarity, it's to continue to August 19th with an intent to approve, with direction to staff to prepare the necessary resolution and conditions of approval.
Right. And are the maker of the motion and the second good with that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So with that, I'll ask for a roll call vote, Laura.
Helen Bongio,
Yes.
Thomas Mulder,
No.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
Mike Newman.
No, because of the general plan.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell,
Yes.
and Melanie McCaver.
Yes.
Motion carries to have it brought back to us. Okay. So with that, we're going to take a 5-minute break before we move into the next item. Thank you, everybody.
The recording has stopped. Meeting is being recorded.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. We're going to resume our meeting. And the first item we're going to do is item number 3, the zoning ordinance amendments to the commercial cannabis. This is to be continued to the August 19th meeting. So if I could get a motion to do that, that would be great.
So moved.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, seconded.
All right. Any discussion on that motion and second?
I'm sorry, I was a little late coming back. Can you tell me what this is?
To continue the zoning ordinance amendments to the commercial cannabis land use ordinance to the August 19th.
Thank you.
So we have a motion.
My only question is, if we're continuing it, do we still take public comment on it?
No, I wouldn't.
Public comment on the continuance if you like, but you really don't need to take public comment.
I believe you have to.
You don't have to.
No.
You're saying no, and I don't believe that we should. I think we should do it when.
Yeah, no, if it's continued, it's continued. That's fine. Sorry to complicate it.
It's okay. That's what discussion's for. All right, so we have a motion and a second to continue the zoning ordinance to the August 19th. Laura, roll call vote, please.
Alan Bongio,
Yes.
Thomas Mulder,
Yes.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
Mike Newman,
Yes.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell,
Yes.
Melanie McCaver.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Okay, and now's that point where we're going to do a little bit of switching around. We're going to put item number H, new public hearings, before the items that were pulled from consent. So the first item that we're going to look at is the Humboldt County Department of Public Works Conditional Use Permit and Special Permit in the Breakhead area. And I'll take a staff report, please.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. I have a few slides if I can share real quick.
Okay.
This. Let's see. Is that working?
Yeah.
Okay, so this project before you tonight is a conditional use permit for portions of the Humboldt Bay Trail South project that are within land zone natural resources and industrial general and within the county's jurisdiction. The Humboldt Bay Trail South project would expand the Humboldt Bay Trail by 4.25 miles and complete the trail connection between Arcata and Eureka. Currently, the trail ends just north of Braycut over here, and the county project would extend the trail through Braycut and along to terminate, or our project would end at where the city limits begin at the Brainerd Mill site or at California Redwood Company. The trail would then continue in the city of Eureka to the Eureka Waterfront Trail. Also included in this project tonight is a lot line adjustment, a minor one to adjust 2 parcels. This parcel 33 is the Braycut site, has the bakery and the trailer sales. And this small highlighted area is on a separate parcel And the lot line adjustment would basically move the line a little bit south to accommodate, that yellow area is where some of the trailer sales are. And that's the component of the lot line adjustment. And as this project spans both county and state jurisdiction for coastal development permits, a consolidated coastal development permit has been requested and is being processed by the California Coastal Commission. All the reviewing agencies that have provided timely comments have either recommended approval or conditional approval of the project. Accordingly, as lead agency, the Department of Public Works circulated an initial study and mitigated negative declaration. The mitigated negative declaration was adopted by the County Board of Supervisors on July 31st, 2018. Planning staff believes the applicant has submitted evidence in support of making all the required findings and approving the project. So with that, I will end my report and try to answer any questions you have.
Any questions of staff from the commission? All right, seeing none, I will open it up for public comment. And first caller is 2122. Go ahead.
Good evening, Chair Bonjo. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. And fellow chairman, or commissioners, excuse me. This is Uri Driscoll from Arcata. The rail corridor in question is currently in the federal process of abandonment. If the Surface Transportation Board decides to approve a new rail operator rather than rail bank, the current trail design will need to be completely redesigned. Public Works has been made well aware of this by members of the public and through attorney correspondence. The county, along with NCRA, conducted extensive outreach in 2012 and determined the Bay Rail Corridor should be maintained as a rail with trail. That information is on page 31 of the staff report. The current design also violates its own funding application as well as current NCRA trail policy. That's the rail authority. Additionally, it violates the recommendations of the report commissioned by Senate Bill 1029 that stated the Bay Rail Corridor should be a rail with trail to allow for excursion trains, trolleys, and rail bikes, all of which represent existing use or active proposals. A fair argument can also be made that the economic impacts of this trail as presented would significantly limit or eliminate those uses, and that has not been studied. For instance, the Fort Bragg rail bike operation generated $3 million in direct revenue in the year 2020 alone. Rail Runner USA's active rail bike proposal here locally would be limited to 6 months per year, but could realistically generate $1.5 million per year, plus very significant ancillary revenue. Excuse me, lodging, meals, and other tourist activities like that. Any vote on this project as presented would be premature due to the lack of sufficient economic study and the glaring fact this project would not be viable until or unless the rail banking determination is made. Such a determination is not guaranteed. A fair argument can also be made that impacts to wetlands associated mitigations have not been identified, which the applicant admits in the staff report. Considering the mechanism to encroach onto fish and wildlife wetlands is also not identified, resulting impacts could not have been studied or findings made. A fair argument can be made also proposed tree removal impacts have not been studied. It would be very prudent to postpone any approval of this project until the above mentioned determinations and findings have been completed and a full EIR is completed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next caller is David Spreen. Go ahead, David. *6 to unmute.
Not a beat.
How about that?
Yep. There you go.
I'm a board member, longtime resident of Humboldt County and a board member of the Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities. We recognize this will be a great addition to the growing regional trail network and will give more local residents access to healthy, low-carbon transportation. However, the CRTP is asking for a few design improvements to this project to make it safer and more effective. Specifically, we believe, first, there should be a safe, separated bicycle infrastructure for the entire length of the trail. Currently, the design calls for bikes sharing space with cars on Dolbear Street. Secondly, the plan should not include the proposed large parking lot on Myrtle Avenue because that will encourage driving instead of active transportation. So we would ask that the commission make these adjustments and then approve this project without further delay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, Emily Sinkhorn. Emily, are you there? Welcome. Go ahead. Emily, are you there? You just muted yourself. *6.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Apologies for that delay. My name is Emily Sinkhorn. I'm the Environmental Services Director for the City of Arcata, and I'm calling in support of the Planning Commission following staff recommendations for this project. The City of Arcata has worked in partnership with the county, Humboldt County Association of Governments, and many state and local and community organizations in support of the Humboldt Bay Trail for well over a decade. And the City of Arcata completed the Humboldt Bay Trail North project in 2017. And since that time, we have seen tremendous use of the trail, even though it goes to an end point along the bay, awaiting our future connection with the county's project. Our data has shown that we have about between 90 and 100 people on bikes and 190 people walking on our sections of our trail every day on average through all seasons, and have really recognized an uptick in trail use during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we also really recognize that this project connecting Arcata and Eureka, our two most populated communities in Humboldt County, it is of such importance. This is a huge transformational project and will really assist the city and the county in meeting our greenhouse gas emission goals, as well as really provide a network of connectivity for active transportation and health and wellness and tourism in our county. So really encourage your support, and also recognize that this process has been thoroughly led by County Public Works with thorough public engagement and analysis, including an adopted CEQA document. And so thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on this? 7454. Go ahead.
Thank you for my opportunity. Trails are a very interesting thing, and I do support them in concept. Unfortunately, as the first speaker mentioned here, this project has not ripened to the port where it should be brought before you. I always find it interesting that we're supposed to make comments on a quote-unquote 60% design plans. And does that mean that 40% of this thing can be changed? I don't quite understand why we don't have a pretty definitive plan at this time, but maybe that's how they all do these things. You have two actions here, and they're separate actions. I'm surprised they weren't separate actions. It seems like you'd have to do the lot line adjustment first before you could adjust that, but you have those bundled together. I do find, and I watched this thing quite a bit, and I was kind of amazed that a mitigated negative deck was used for this within the supervisor's chambers. I think at that time there was a fair argument that it required an EIR. There was major outcry when the removal of the eucalyptus trees, which my understanding has not changed. Those are to be removed, even though Caltrans basically mitigated the potential problems that those allegedly might cause. And I don't see the branches falling down like they were, and the trees seem to be in magnificent shape. And even though they're not a native species, I still find them quite attractive. And it just bothers me that we don't have an EIR regarding the removal of that. Also, that it doesn't appear that wetlands are mitigated correctly. And those things, I think, are fair argument to run this process to a full EIR. And I think the determination possibly to do this by the supervisors was erroneous. So I guess if this is our second bite at the apple, your foundation is flawed. And I highly recommend this project go through a full EIR process. And I do support the arguments that were made by the first speaker. And also, until it actually is put in a position where it can move forward and it's rail banked, it's, in my opinion, extremely premature to move forward on this portion of the project. At that time, if it is rail banked, then the people have spoken, and I think that would be the time to move forward, but still doing a full EIR on this project of this scope. It's not a small little project, and we seem to always have problems in Humboldt County trying to do mitigated negative decks, and then just kind of like in many situations, we should have done an EIR, and that would have alleviated a lot of the concerns and enabled the public to fully address their environmental concerns on a project. Just a general thing. Not that I'm saying the project's bad, but I think that should always happen. Go that extra mile to start with, rather than potentially ending up having to do one later and the project being stalled out further. Thank you for my opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Reese Hughes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to say that this has been studied continuously and thoroughly, as Emily said, for more than 10 years, if not 20 years. Just want to note that the community support for this project has been much in evidence by the more than 400 individuals and businesses that have contributed to the Humboldt Bay Trail Fund, a fund that is now worth more than $500,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who wishes to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment, and I'm going to bring this back to the commission, and I see Brian Mitchell has his hand up. So go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to follow up on a couple of the public comments that we received, and I was hoping that we could have staff talk about wetland fill, and specifically in the coastal zone, the policies specifically enumerate the reasons for which ESHA may be filled. And so could you just talk about which exemption we met and if we're even filling ESHA per the Coastal Act? Thank you.
Sure, Commissioner Mitchell. In the coastal zone, typically filling wetlands is not permitted. There's very few allowances to fill wetlands, and public trails, nature trails is one of the very few allowances to fill wetlands. And of course, they must be mitigated, but this is one of the allowed uses to fill wetlands in the coastal zone.
And is a 1-to-1 ratio appropriate, or does it have to be more sometimes? Or how do we determine how much to offset it?
There's generally no established ratio, and I believe that's probably going to be more worked out through the coastal development permit, but a minimum of 1-to-1 is generally the requirement.
Thank you very much.
Melanie, you're next.
Oh, yes, thank you. I just wanted to say that I'm in support of the project. The 4-to-1 or greater compensation for wetlands is more than adequate. It's been studied, and there are a lot of benefits to the project, not only for our local area, but in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and for tourism.
Thank you, Melanie. Mike Newman.
I'm trying to unmute there and get my video up. There we go. So I have a couple questions for staff. pending with what public comment is mentioned, especially about the railroad corridor. There is an alternative to have this on the west side of the railroad corridor, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
I may defer to Hank Steeman on this in Public Works. He may be more well-versed in these alternatives.
Sure, through the chair. So the first technical study for this segment of the Bay Trail was done in 2013, and we started with an alternatives analysis. And there's a number of criteria for what makes an alternative feasible. And obviously one of the objectives is to reduce environmental impacts. And so trying to widen the railroad prism to the west would push it out into the Humboldt Bay. And so that would clearly have impacts. It would also have safety impacts. And so that was just not considered a feasible option. So the preferred option was to put it within the transportation corridor between the railroad and the highway.
Of course. I'm all for the trail to connect through Arcata to Eureka. My question is on this west side of the railroad corridor alternative, I think I was seeing that it would be a raised portion using a boardwalk, probably similar to what City of Eureka has done behind the Blue Ox at different portions along there. Is that correct?
Yeah, that concept was discussed early on, and this portion of the bay with the depth of water, the wind waves, it would just not be technically feasible. It's a very different wave environment, hydraulic environment than behind Target.
So this alternative is not viable at all as it's put forth here. It says high uncertainty whether required permits would be acquired.
Yeah. So
is that why?
There's multiple reasons. I mean, I was describing how, just to try to put a stable boardwalk in the open bay creates immense engineering challenges. And then just the impacts to the aquatic environment in the bay would most certainly be prohibitive from the Coastal Commission and other agencies.
So this is taking over the railroad without a right-of-way at all for a possible, the skunk train has the bicycles going along the rail along there. So I know there's been talk about that and trying to get that as a possibility, especially with the pedestrian trail along the area here. So that would do away, this recommendation, the main recommendation would do away with that possibility.
I don't believe it does.
So you're talking about the rail is still there and the trail is beside it, or what?
Would you like me to describe the trail design and how it integrates with the railroad?
And this particular project that we're looking at, it ends at the City of Eureka, or is this continuing on and we're okaying the City of Eureka's portion as well?
So what's before you tonight is just 1.8 miles of the project. It's about 40%, and it's only within the unincorporated area.
I just want to make sure that's out there for the public.
Okay. Yeah, so what's before you is to approve a conditional use permit and a special permit from the southern terminus of Arcata's project to Eureka city limits, which is located just north of the old Brainerd Mill site.
And that the rest of that is about how many miles?
The total trail project's 4.2 miles.
For the
So about-
additional part or the part from your Arcata to connect to the existing Eureka waterfront trail?
So it's about 1.8 miles in the unincorporated area and then 2.5 miles in the city limits.
So 4 miles total is
correct.
About. Okay. So we're talking about not doing away with the rail right away. We're not paving over it.
Correct.
So it'll be beside it.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
I could go into more detail if you'd like.
I would like a little bit more detail if you could.
Sure. So if you're driving southbound from Arcata, you see Arcata's bike path. So it's a 10-foot wide paved path. They widened the rail prism, and there's a minimum setback between the trail and the rails. And then it comes to a stop. And so our project will continue that parallel construction. We're putting a new bridge over Brainerd Slough where the railroad culverts have washed out. So there'll be a separate trail bridge there. And then we continue the parallel design through, in front of the Breakout Industrial Park. And there'll be a crosswalk there at their driveway entrance. And then we continue parallel to the rail prism. We're widening the rail prism and we're parallel to the tracks all the way to the mill site. So we're going to be 10 feet. So from the center line of the rails to the edge of the trail shoulder, we have a 10-foot separation. So we are proposing to remove the rails and ties in that segment because they've been severely damaged by wind waves and overtopping from the bay. So we're proposing to remove the rails and ties so that we can repair the shoreline revetment and rebuild the rail prism up to a minimum elevation. But we're still creating the setback that would allow the rails and ties to be restored by another party. So the geometrics are there for it to be restored, but we can't use trail funds to subsidize rail operation or rail bike operation and restore the damaged infrastructure. And those rails are in bad shape. The rails and ties are in bad shape and they can't be operated currently. I should say that proposal has been approved by the North Coast Railroad Authority. We have an executed lease agreement with them. And just as a final note, so there was reference to rail banking. And so North Coast Railroad Authority has submitted a request to the Federal Surface Transportation Board for rail banking. That keeps the rail corridor in federal jurisdiction. It allows interim use for trails and potential future use for rail. And so that is a condition for us to be able to remove the rails and ties. And so, we're waiting for STB to make a decision on rail banking. I would expect it to come in the next month or two.
Great. Thank you, Hank.
Sure.
Hank, while you're still there, I got a question for you. This is Alan Bongio. You answered most of the questions there. My concern is the continuation of it is when it gets to the city of Eureka's portion, is everything stay the same from that point on? The same configuration, the train track? The train is what I'm concerned about. That, at some point that all of a sudden disappears and now that opportunity is lost forever. So I just want reassurance that the train will always be able to go through. I know you're the county of Humboldt, not the city of Eureka, but I would think a project like this has been thought through. So that's my concern.
Could you rephrase your question?
Is the completed project going to look like what the city of Arcata has done so far, with the tracks remaining there, the new path? You said 10 feet, I think, was the dimension to the side of the train track all the way into Eureka. I mean, at some point they're going to separate because they separate where they cross the slough.
I'm certainly willing to describe the portion of the project that's within city limits. But yeah, I just wanted to make with the caveat that that's not the project that's before the commission for action tonight.
I understand.
But would you like me to go ahead and describe that?
I just want to know that when this project's completed, that there's going to be a viable railroad corridor going around the bay. That's, I don't know how to ask it any plainer or.
Yeah, I believe there is. There would need to be an investment in infrastructure. And, you know, we started this project in 2013. One of our design objectives was to be compatible with future rail use. And so even with the changes with the Senate bill and where Railroad Authority is going now in terms of becoming a trail agency, we're still creating the space that the rail between Eureka and Arcata could be restored in the future. So for this project, we're maintaining that design objective.
I think you answered the question. Thank you. Any other questions for Hank while you have him here? Mike Newman, go ahead.
So with that in mind, Hank, on over to the bridge that is existing for the rail, what happens exactly there as on the plans? At this point, I know that it's not in your jurisdiction, but what is the plans with the trail and the rail across that bridge? How will it be used?
You're talking about the Eureka Slough Bridge?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a part of our overall project. That's within the city of Eureka. Yeah, and so just for information, so we're proposing dual use of the railroad bridge. So the distance between the railings is 17 feet. And so we'll have a trail lane on the outer edge of each rail. And then we're installing what's called a flangeway filler adjacent to the rail. So it's a very thick piece of linear rubber that's attached to the rail. And it's solid enough that it will not depress for a bike wheel or a wheelchair wheel, but it will depress under the weight of a flange wheel for a speeder car or a railroad. And so that gives us a safe surface adjacent to the trail so that wheels don't get stuck, but it does allow flange vehicles that have enough weight to depress the flangeway filler to cross over the bridge. So Timber Heritage Association will be able to run their speeders across the bridge with these improvements.
As well as the rail, what are they called? The bikes on the rails?
We did a test maybe a year and a half ago, and we installed a section of the flangeway filler on Eureka Slough Bridge, and THA Speeder was able to depress the flangeway filler, but the rail bike is too light. And so the wheel on the rail bike doesn't depress the flangeway filler. That doesn't mean it can't pass. It can be pushed across the bridge, but it's not going to be able to pedal across with those flangeway fillers.
Okay. Any other alternative? Is there across there any talk about having it? Well, I guess it would be hard to close it off for then for those those bikes at the time that they're in use. I'm thinking that it'll be a set time and not all the time, but
we're kind of getting away from this project.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Hank while we have him here? All right. Thank you, Hank, for answering those questions. So what's the pleasure of the commission on this one?
I feel like we should move forward, and I'm ready to make a motion that we find that the project is consistent with previously adopted mitigated negative declaration, make the findings for approval of the conditional use permit, special permit, and the lot line adjustment, and adopt the resolution approving the Humboldt County Department of Public Works project subject to the recommended conditions.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? Noah, go ahead.
Just want to quickly say that I really strongly support this project as described and as conditioned. I'm glad we had a discussion about what the impact would be on the potential for rail use, but I'm satisfied that we're not foreclosing those options. And I do think that this project is well studied and ready to go.
All right, Mike Newman, you put your hand up.
So I have to agree that it sounds like a good project because there has been the work with maintaining the rail with the trail and the possibility in the future, especially with the heavier flanges there on the slough bridge, and then having the separation for the rest so that the rail is viable. I'm sure that the Timber Heritage Association with the speeder bikes, that's the word that I was looking for, or the speeder bike rail, whatever they're called, is able to operate through there so that it is available to go around, because that's a viable solution for a lot of tourists in our area, as well as I think citizens of Eureka.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, with that, Laura, I'd ask for a roll call vote.
Ellen Bongio,
Yes.
Thomas Mulder, Thomas,
are you- Oh,
Levy,
Yes.
Mike Newman,
Yes.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell,
Yes.
Melanie McCaver,
Yes.
Thomas Mulder.
He did have his hand up.
I'm going to abstain because I missed half the conversation because I got kicked off this Zoom.
okay. Well, I think it wouldn't made a difference one way or the other. It 6 votes yes, so the motion carries. It's approved. All right, thank you, everyone. All right, number 2 item. Stott billboard, conditional use permit in the Fortuna area. And we'll take a staff report, please.
Yes, good evening, Chair Bongio. Kathleen Franklin with Land Logistics and members of the commission. Let me get my screen shared for you. Trying to find, let me just get started. I'm sorry, I don't seem to be able to share completely here. So the project before you this evening is the Stott Billboard Conditional Use Permit. The project is located, as you said, in the Fortuna area. It is at the southwest corner of Drake Hill Road and Eel River Drive, and it's approximately 250 feet east of the Caltrans right-of-way. The applicant had supplied this picture I just wanted to put up for you to see, showing the northbound direction of what the area looks like now and what the area would look like with the billboard in place. And this is a picture of the type of sign that it will be. So the project description is a conditional use permit for a new illuminated off-premise billboard sign. The proposed billboard is 50 feet in height. It will be two-sided. The advertising space is a total of 480 square feet, and it will be illuminated from dusk to midnight by LED luminaries. These are the justifications that staff is using for denial of the project, and they are based on the two elements of the general plan. The first is the commercial recreation, chapter 4. The land use designation is commercial recreation, which is intended for commercial recreation facilities and accommodations only, recreation, tourist-oriented sales and service, and it's geared to local and visitor needs. The second element of the general plan that we were basing the denial on is the conservation and open space element, chapters 10 and 7. And the goals and policies contained in this chapter relate to the protection of scenic areas that contribute to the enjoyment of Humboldt's county's beauty and abundant natural resources. And the policies that we used from that are several, actually, starting with SR 6, which is a scenic highway map. And it states that until such time as a general plan scenic highway roadway map is prepared and adopted, Humboldt County highways listed in sections 263.1 through 263.8 of the California Street and Highway Code shall be considered to be scenic highways. The second policy from that area is SRP3, which is the Scenic Highway Protection. And it states that projects of the scenic quality of designated scenic highways for the enjoyment of natural and scenic resources, coastal views, landmarks, or points of interest and cultural interest. The third policy is the term of off-premise billboards and prohibition. And this says limit the term of new and existing off-premise billboards by ordinance to provide to provide for removal consistent with the Outdoor Advertising Act. The third policy is the Scenic Highway Standards, and this is B of that policy. Permitted uses shall be allowed except the construction of new off-premise billboards. Permitted uses that are within the visual area measure may be required to protect scenic qualities of the site. And finally, policy SR S6 states that Highway 101 shall be considered a scenic highway until a general plan scenic highway roadway map is prepared and adopted, as listed in the sections as stated before, the California Streets and Highway Code. These are the policies and of the general plan that we based our decision on. So subsequent to the preparation of the staff report, the applicant submitted comments for the commission, which you have before you, including a council member that staff has reviewed. Because of that, staff is changing the recommendation, and we are not recommending that the commission find it inconsistent with the Q zone as stated in the staff report. But staff continues to believe that the project is inconsistent with the general plan policies. The other item that I wanted to bring up was that the policy stated that the billboard, if allowed, could not be more than 300 square feet. And this one is, as stated before, 480. The environmental review is that we stated in statutory exemption 1570 that the environmental review is not needed for the denial. And therefore, we are recommending that the commission find the project exempt pursuant to the CEQA section and find that the billboard has failed to demonstrate, the applicant has failed to demonstrate that the proposed new billboard is consistent with the general plan, chapter 4 land use, and chapter 10 scenic resources. So I'd be happy to take any questions.
If you'd share your screen. Any questions for staff? Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about several things about the reasons for denial. Staff states that it's because of SRP3 coastal views. That's one of the reasons for denial. And I don't see where there's a coastal view there. How is that deemed a coastal view? The placement of the sign, proposed placement.
You're talking about SRP3?
P3.
It says protect the scenic quality of designated scenic highways for the enjoyment of natural and scenic resources. And coastal view is just one of those protections. It also protects landmarks or points of historic and cultural interest. So
at the first there, you said designated scenic highways.
SRP. So we're discussing SRP3.
Right.
If I could, the general plan also asks or directs that the highways be considered scenic.
And yes, that was another point I was going to ask and bring that up. About all highways in Humboldt County being designated scenic until they're designated. Is that correct?
No, it states S6 states that Highway 101 shall be considered a scenic highway until a general plan scenic highway road map. So we're talking about Highway 101.
Okay, so until it's designated as scenic? That's yes, what I wrote from what I heard.
Yes, the policy states until it shall be considered until highway roadway map is prepared and adopted as listed in the sections of the California Streets and Highway Code.
So
does that make sense?
Well, so 101 throughout Humboldt County, I don't believe there's a designated scenic portion of it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Uh,
However, the general plan, that policy states that Highway 101 shall be considered a scenic highway until a general plan scenic highway roadway map is prepared and adopted.
I agree that most of 101 is scenic, but the designation of a scenic highway, what does that all entail?
Director Ford, do you want to?
That involves the state making a determination that the highway meets certain criteria of having scenic value and designating it actually as a scenic highway.
What other portions of 101 has been designated scenic?
No,
outside of Humboldt.
Outside of Humboldt County, that's true. The general plan in this particular case identifies that the entire length of Highway 101 within Humboldt County should be considered as being scenic.
Okay, I just find that difficult to fathom that it's that way for the whole 101 corridor, especially since very few, the criteria for designated scenic highway is kind of up there. It's a bar that needs to be crossed. And if we're designating the whole 101 until it's designated as a scenic highway, it's kind of like double speak to me on that. Coastal views, highway standards. That's the questions I had for right now.
Noah, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, Kathleen, could you just come back to, again, because I think I don't want to get too caught up in the scenic highway designation, but can you come back to policy SRS3, because that seemed to pretty clearly specify which types of which types of zoning would be compatible with off-premises billboards, and I believe this parcel zoning was not consistent with that. So I just wanted to ask you if you could bring that one up again or remind me.
I would be happy to. It's not the zoning.
Sorry, the land use designation.
Land use designation, it's the general plan. So the policy states new off-premise billboards shall be restricted to a maximum term of 15 years and limited to areas designated as commercial services or industrial general. This land use is commercial recreation, so it's neither one of those where they are permitted.
Okay, thank you. That was just reminding me what I thought I heard. Thanks.
Right.
Sorry, thank you. Talk with the director while you were speaking. Sorry about that. Any other questions for staff before we open this up for the public? Okay, seeing none, I'll open up public comment on this item. And the first one is Greg Rediker, Scott Outboard Bike. Go ahead, Greg.
Yes, thank you very much. Oh gosh, no one can see me here. I would, gosh, I can't seem to do a screen share here. I had a brief PowerPoint prepared for you.
Can we have that done?
Okay, we got to share screen now. Here we go.
There we go.
All right, can everyone see that there?
Yes.
Gosh, I can't see it myself here. Start the video. Here we go. Anyway, okay, so I cannot see my own PowerPoint here. Is it showing the initial green screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. My name is Greg Redeker. I represent Stott Outdoor Advertising for this project. Just to review a few things here, and that is not advancing. All right. Stott is an independent outdoor company. We've been operating in Northern California for over 70 years, including several decades in Humboldt County. This is one of the exhibits that was provided to the commission back on Monday. I wanted to make sure everyone has had an opportunity to review the 7-page letter that I submitted along with the 14 pages of exhibits. It includes a lot of information which is relevant to the project. This one here shows the relationship of the two existing Stott signs on the CW Wood Products property to the south to the proposed sign location. Here's the updated site plan. It contained a little bit of additional information. Why here? Because Humboldt County businesses want it here. We have requests for businesses who want to advertise to travelers along Highway 101. Frequently, we have no inventory available to give them. And so this would help alleviate that need. We would also note that according to the zoning ordinance, the sign is allowed here with the use permit in the CH zone. This is one of the last remaining sites in the area south of Fortuna where a sign could be built. And I'd also note that even with the sign being approved, we'll still have fewer signs than there were prior to the construction of the 101-36 interchange down in Alton, which resulted in the removal of a number of signs. So is this a highway-oriented commercial use? The answer is yes. According to the state of California, it is a legitimate commercial use of property adjacent to roads and highways, should be allowed to exist. General plan and zoning, I'm pleased that the staff changed their recommendation on the Q zoning, so we can ignore that. What I will say is that the commercial recreation designation is consistent with the C1, C2, and CH zones pursuant to the general plan. Those allow a wide variety of commercial uses, including retail, restaurants, things like that. I'd also note this is an unmanned facility that's going to be eminently compatible with the area. There's no traffic, noise, odor, vibration. It's never going to call 911. It's never going to use a local park. It just sits there and does its thing. Also, this property is in a flood zone, so you don't want to have necessarily habitable floor area in the flood zone. So here's that Q overlay zone. So that's been addressed, so we can move on from that. Here is the excerpt from the general plan showing that there's a lot more consistent with the CR land use designation than just the limited things in the description. This, I think, is what it comes down to. There's a number of implementation measures in the general plan for how all of these standards in the Chapter 10 are going to be implemented. And first one for the mapping of scenic highways is initiate a public process to identify, map, and designate the scenic areas. And then the second one is amend the sign ordinance. Similar to the previous cell tower issue where there's a disconnect between what the general plan policy says and what the code says. In this case, it is to be implemented by amending the sign ordinance, and that has not yet occurred. So how does it happen? It is actually initiated by the county. The county does a visual assessment. They work in concert with Caltrans Landscape Architecture Division, and you end up with a corridor protection program, which has a number of things that have to be done, including adoption of ordinances that are binding. I would note on this here that the dashed lines are the areas where there may be the need for formal conflict resolution, because you're talking about what people can do with their property, what they're allowed to do with signs, things like that. The great news about doing this formal process is that at the end of the day, you end up with these lovely scenic route signs with the California poppy on them. So there's absolutely no question about what is considered a scenic route and what is not. I'd also note that there's some general plan policies in the economic development chapter talking about having clear permitting and licensing processes and updating ordinances and permit processes. So I would certainly encourage the county to do that. So what's it going to look like? Here's the existing view looking to the north. Here's what it'll look like when the sign has been constructed. Here's the view looking towards the south. You can see the two existing signs on the CW Wood Products property. This will add one more to the north. The design is exactly the same as the two on the CW Wood Products property, which were approved by the county via use permit 10-16 back in 2011. So just to wrap things up, it is compatible with existing future land uses, including existing signs. This is a very low intensity highway oriented commercial use. It is allowed by the zoning code with a use permit. It supports local businesses and the economy. And most importantly, this is an opportunity for the property owners, the gardeners, to generate income from their commercially zoned property. So we would respectfully request that you ask staff to prepare findings for approval and bring this back at a future public hearing. And that concludes my comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? All right, seeing none. Thank you for your presentation.
Can you unshare? There we go.
Yep.
I just had a question about the existing zoning and the allowable zoning that was presented by the applicant. So if he would like to go into depth a little bit more about that, because that seems to be a big stopping point on this recommendation or denial from staff.
Sure. I mean, it's very clear in the county's sign code that off-site signs are allowed with a use permit in the CH zoning district. It's just, that's what the ordinance says. And then if I could direct your attention to Exhibit D of the report, of the letter that I sent to you on Monday. This is some analysis from your own county counsel's office noting the problems with the current state of affairs, noting that the county does not have a billboard ordinance and that they find the lack of a billboard ordinance to be highly problematic given that you are regulating a protected First Amendment activity. And the magnifying glass, so to speak, for judicial scrutiny has only gotten larger since this memo was prepared with the Supreme Court decision of things like Reed versus Gilbert. So it's certainly possible for the county to adopt an ordinance which prohibits billboards in this location, but it has to go through the process, cross the T's, dot the I's, make all the required findings. As someone who used to work in the urban planning field and was a zoning administrator, I know the importance of findings. And I believe that right now, the county would be on some thin ice if they wanted to deny the project.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant while we have them here? Okay, thank you. We're in the public comments, so I'm gonna open up to the next speaker, and that's 7454. Kent.
This is Kent Sawatsky, and I'm going to emphasize thin ice and why my opinion is the county's on thin ice on so many topics. Some of you participated in the general plan process. Some of you didn't. Some of you don't have a clue what happened back then. But there's all kinds of deadlines and things that are not being met. Now, the staff is taxed because of a certain other topic, which we seem to be spending a majority of our meetings on. Zoning's not completed. There's a long list of things. And those things, I think, were on a schedule. This kind of thing should have been completed 2 years or 3 years after the general plan was moved to its point. But they've all languished. That's all been put aside. I guess the general plan really isn't that important enough to go ahead and bring these things to fruition. I totally agree. If the county had done its due diligence and gone ahead and developed this sign ordinance in a manner and done the proper procedure, you wouldn't be on thin ice. And I think that's a very relevant term regarding where the county is on a whole bunch of issues. When the general plan basically got dropped and we went off to do other things and did amendments to change it for one specific purpose. Regarding these signs, of course, I watched this and I know the location. I don't think this is going to be an improper location. It's not like it's right on the bay. It's not in some major viewscape. I did not hear or have not to date heard any negative thing from the town of Fortuna, and maybe in their sphere of influence or not. It's not a flashing billboard that has moving figures. I mean, we have those out there, and some people find those distracting. I notice a sign right across from the courthouse is one of those, and the city of Eureka permitted that. So I think this is a pretty low-key sign. I don't find it objectionable. And if you folks do, then I highly recommend that you push and prod staff to move forward with this particular ordinance. But under the circumstances that you have right now, I feel it's proper to move forward and go ahead and permit this sign. I don't know, maybe you'd feel better if he committed to say there to be only cannabis ads like there appears to be on 50% of the signs that are billboards that are out there now. But I don't think we need to go into that direction. But and I always find that so interesting that seems to be the prevalent billboard signs now along these scenic highways. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Kent. Anybody else who wishes to speak on public comment on this issue? Seeing no more hands, I'm going to close the public comment. Yes, Director? Yeah.
If I could, I'd like to respond to a couple of the comments that have been made in the public. And so while we are a little bit behind in the implementation of the general plan for a variety of reasons, the fact of the matter is the lack of an ordinance does not invalidate the policies that are in place in the general plan. The general plan is still the preeminent policy document of the county. And so these policies call for preparation of an ordinance, they call for declaration of a scenic highway, they call for the starting of that process, but they also give guidance in terms of how decisions are to be made. And so this is a discretionary project. While the applicant is entirely correct that the zoning ordinance does allow this activity with a conditional use permit, a conditional use permit is a discretionary action that must be found consistent with both the zoning ordinance and the general plan. So the policies in the general plan must be considered, must be found in the affirmative in order to approve a project. One of the things that we have backed away from the Q zone, but I would like to add for the commission's consideration an additional finding to replace the Q zone finding that's currently in the resolution. And the finding would essentially say this: there is a substantial public interest in the denial of the sign. The county general plan desires to see Highway 101 designated as a scenic highway and calls for it, and this is the evidence, and calls for it to be treated as a scenic highway. That's A. B, approving offsite signage along Highway 101 is not compatible with a scenic highway designation. C, there are 2 existing billboards on the property. And D, approval of additional offsite signs along a highway intended to be designated as a scenic highway could designate the ability to receive the designation as a scenic highway.
All right. Done, Director?
I'm done.
Thank you. All right, bring it back to the panelists. And well, he is the applicant, so I'm going to let him speak. Greg, go ahead, but we're not going to have a big back and forth. I'll let you rebuttal.
Sure, I'm just going to say briefly that a scenic highway segment has to be at least 1 mile in length with no significant visual intrusions which detract from the natural beauty of the area. That's existing Caltrans regulation and part of the legislation for the California Scenic Highways legislation. Once again, it's been adopted in 1963. In the interim 58 years, no one's gone through the bother of officially making it scenic. So any argument as to whether it actually is scenic or not, we don't know because we don't have a visual assessment.
Thank you. Melanie, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say that I find it a bit ironic that one of the reasons given for it not being scenic is that it is covered in billboards, and adding one wouldn't help that situation. So I agree with all of the staff on this one, and I'm prepared to make the motion. The other commissioner in agreement.
Thank you, Melanie. Anybody else? Not, I'll go ahead, Noah, and then I'll follow you.
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm prepared to make a motion or go along with a motion as well, but I'd like to hear what you have to say, Alan. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm troubled by this one. I of all the things we've had tonight, this is the one that I got hung up in reading the staff report, and I've seen where these have went before, even with this commission. I'm troubled that we don't have our general plan up to date on this, but yet we're saying he can't do it. What the applicant just said, that it's not been declared a scenic highway, is troubling. You can't have it both ways. I mean, it seems like the right place to me to have one. I'm not a lover of billboards. Don't get me wrong. I'd like to see probably less of them if I had to decide less or more. But in the same note, if there was a place to have one in the Fortuna area, this is the area to have it. I mean, you're coming up the road towards Fortuna. That's where you got to see the sign, so you know where to go, whatever that service is that is on it. I don't want to get into the weeds on, you know, what the thing is going to say or anything, but it just seems like it is a prime location for it. It seems like it's zoned right. I have a hard time saying no to it. We say no to so many things, and we wonder why our county is so stagnant. I mean, I'm having a hard time. I doubt the votes will be with me, but I am having a hard time going with staff recommendation on this one. And I usually do go with staff recommendation. So it's just some thought. Thomas, I see you have your hand up.
So my confusion in the project summary or whatever, page 2, is it says the present land use designation, but then the present zoning, the current present zoning, unless that slide I saw earlier, it would be allowed. So I'm just confused. Is it commercial recreationally zoned, or is it commercial highway with the zone? So.
What?
Sure, be happy to answer that. So there are two things to keep in mind. There's the general plan land use designation, which is commercial recreation. And then there is the zoning, which is highway commercial. So there are two different designations there. I know that it's confusing. So on the one hand, you've got, you know, the policy guidance of the general plan, and then you've got the law of the zoning ordinance.
Okay, because correct me if I'm wrong, with some of the places, their zoning's been changed to the general plan. That's a whole process with landowners going to have it coincide with the general plan. Okay.
That is correct.
Well, being as I'm with you, Alan, actually on this one, being as the land use with the property owner hasn't changed, I'm with whatever the current zoning is, whatever those rules would apply.
Anybody else have thoughts on this one?
So, Alan, are you proposing that the general plan needs to be amended because you don't agree with the policy that states that the new billboards need to be in, you know, the industrial or the other land use designation enumerated there?
no, if I understand it right, we haven't got ordinances in the general plan that deal with the billboards, and that's something that we're supposed to have in there. At some point, we're going to get them, but it seems like we've had this come up before us at least twice now that I know of. So it seems like it's not very important to get this one done or something. I'm sure there are more important things than billboards, but it makes it very difficult for these applicants. I mean, to me, this just looks like it's where it should be. I don't know how else to say it. And it appears that it was designed that to be that way, but it needs a conditional use permit. So that means it needs to come before us. I'm having a hard time saying no to something that it may not be written down, but you could look at that either way. That goes in favor of the project too, because it's not written that it's not spelled out that nope, can't have them because all this is scenic highway. I mean, it's not designated scenic highway. So how do you it's nice to say that, but it's not. And are we going to go with what it is or what we want it to be? Because I want a lot of things all the time, but I have to not get them or do them because that's not the way it is. So I have a really hard time with this one. I will be a no vote to not accept the project. I think it should go back and be brought back to us that it could be done. That's what was said in the beginning if we didn't go with what the staff's recommendation is. But I'm only one person, and it's been made clear that there's people that feel the other way, and that's fine. That's what the commission's all about. I encourage the differences in talking about. So that's I don't know if I answered your question, Brian, but Melanie, put your hand up.
Oh, it's still up, but I can make a motion, a resolution by the Planning Commission of County of Humboldt to make all of the findings and deny the stock outdoor advertising billboard conditional use permit.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will ask Laura for a roll call vote.
Alan Bongio,
No.
Thomas Mulder,
I'm going to go no because of current zoning.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
Mike Newman,
No.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell,
Yes.
Melanie McCaver,
Yes.
Motion carries 4-3. The project is denied. Good work, guys. Okay. So now, where are we at? We're at 9 o'clock. So we're going to go back into the consent calendar and the items that were pulled from consent. So the first item that was pulled from consent is item number 2, Eco Green Grow LLC conditional use permit, special permit in the Willow Creek area. And I'll take a staff report, please. Staff report, please.
Yes, hi, good evening, commissioners. Here we go. All right. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Megan Acevedo, and I'm the planner for Eco Green Grow. Eco Green Grow is applying for a conditional use permit and a special permit for their project located in the Willow Creek area. Here is an image of the project's location in reference to Willow Creek. The project is located just southeast of Willow Creek. The parcel is accessed by a private driveway off of U.S. Forest Service Route 7N15 from U.S. Forest Service Route 7N02 from Horse Linto Road. From Patterson Road.
It's so late.
Excuse me. Yeah. Can we do a full slide?
You're sharing your notes.
Can you see my screen, or is it showing the wrong?
It's showing a split, showing your notes.
My notes? Okay. Sorry about that. Let's see. I don't know why it did that, but okay.
There you go.
I'll do it this way. Huh. I don't know why it's doing that.
Megan, hit the presentation button now.
I don't know why it's showing you my notes.
That's okay. We can follow along with you.
I'm trying to switch it, but it's not. I don't know.
Just go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Patterson Road is county maintained. A road evaluation report was submitted for Horse Linto Creek Road, designating it as being developed to the equivalent of a Category 4 road standard. It has been determined that the access road does meet functional capacity for the project's needs. This is the parcel, which is the full parcel is partially in Humboldt County and partially in Trinity County. As you can see, the Humboldt County and Trinity County line there. Parcel is 70 acres, zoned Timberland Production Zone, and land use designation is Timberland. The applicant is applying for an acre of pre-existing full sun outdoor and 3,600 square feet of mixed light commercial cannabis cultivation with 4,716 square feet of ancillary propagation space, which is 10% of the cultivation area. Water is sourced by a groundwater well on site that produces 15 gallons per minute. A letter was submitted from David Fish from Fish Drilling, who is a hydrogeologist, determining that the well is groundwater. Total annual water demand is estimated to be 302,910 gallons per year. That's 7.58 gallons per square foot per year. There is a total of 26,100 gallons of existing water storage on site. Power is currently sourced by 4 generators, and the applicant plans to transition to 75% solar within 3 years from the date of approval. A conditional use permit is being requested in, oh, this is not correct. Oh no. Let's see. Here we go. A special permit is being requested to reduce the 600-foot setback to 6 Rivers National Forest. Here you can see the boundary line of 6 Rivers and where the cultivation area is proposed. The site plan that was submitted shows a setback of 200 feet to 6 Rivers National Forest. That is the end of my presentation, and staff and I are here for questions.
Any questions for Megan? Mike.
I have a question about the setback. Of 200 feet. I thought that 600 was pretty much our standard. What have been the exceptions to that rule?
I can answer this question. So the ordinance specifies campsites, campgrounds, picnic tables, areas that would be used by the public. And there are no areas within 600 feet that consist of campgrounds, campsites, or recreational areas that would be used by the public. And the applicant is applying for a special permit to request a reduction in the 600-foot setback.
So there is no public access close by that boundary. Is that what you're saying there at all?
Not that I can see from aerial imagery. The project was referred to the U.S. Forest Service, and they did recommend denial, as they do for pretty much all projects that utilize the U.S. Forest Service road.
And that's their reason for denial?
Yes, because they cannot approve a project that will utilize federal roads that will go through federal lands.
Anybody else have a question for Megan while we have it here? All right, seeing none, thank you, Megan. And I will now open this up.
You got Thomas.
Oh, I don't see his hand. I'm sorry, Thomas. I missed you. Go ahead.
No worries. So the confusion I have, if this is in 2 counties, where does our jurisdiction lie to make sure that all activities are done in Humboldt County? Is there at any point in time they have to leave Humboldt County and come back into? Just a question.
So the applicant does have one generator shed that is located in Trinity County, and they are proposing to have a new shed constructed on the Humboldt County portion of the parcel. And I have reviewed the project to ensure that no activities are permitted on the Trinity County side.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission?
I think Noah has his hand.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I think it may have just been answered, but I just want to be crystal clear. So there's nothing in this permit, in this project as described to us, that would depend on activities taking place off the parcel on the Trinity County side.
That is correct. The applicant will have 2 years to relocate the one generator onto Humboldt County side with a provisional permit. And I have let the applicant know that if they want to utilize any buildings on the Trinity County side for their project, they would need to contact Trinity County to get that permitted.
Okay, thank you.
Thomas, I believe you put your hand back up.
Yes, so the generator use, but you're going to be shocked to hear me say this, the generator use to be utilized technically in Trinity County air, do we have authorization to meet CEQA to even allow that generator use in another air management district possibly?
So I would say, Megan, one of the questions that I think you want to explain here is that the generator and the shed are existing facilities that we are, as part of this provisional permit, requiring to be relocated. So the generator is existing, but what the permit will do is require that all facilities be moved into Humboldt County jurisdiction.
I heard that. Director Ford, I just was curious if we're outside our jurisdiction for even allowing it to be used for 1 hour once approved. It was a red flag that came up.
I do want to make a point that I believe that generator shed, it houses 2 generators, one of which is used for the residents in the Trinity County side.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to open this up for public comment. And the first caller is 7454.
Ken Sawatsky, I'm still hanging in here. And unlike some people said, or it was mentioned during public comment on non-agendized items, there's real reasons why these things are being pulled. And that's proven by the fact of all the discussion you folks just had and some concerns. I share those concerns, and that's why I pull these things so that we can discuss them in this forum. The problem you have is, part of it is you have a dual jurisdiction on this parcel. And I understand, and I agree totally, with 5 seconds of having that generator run. And I was curious whether the use and structures and whatnot that are in Trinity County are permitted. Have you reached out to Trinity County to be a good neighbor and say, hey, we've got a lot that's split. We're moving things around. We wanted to have some input. You also had input from the Six Rivers Forest requesting denial. And it really doesn't matter what their reasoning is. The U.S. Forest Service is requesting denial. I wish that sometimes you would take the advice of people like the U.S. government and consider actually following their advice. I have a serious problem with the definition of reason for that 600-foot setback, because I think it should have been, or could have been, and if it was handled right during a mitigated negative deck, would have been for the purpose of also protecting the critters and the environment that you're next to it. And I feel that's more important than the human uses there that you say are the overriding concerns. I have a major concern that you have this ancillary propagation, which comes out to, I think, as John Ford and I discussed earlier, and I took an hour or more of his and my time to discuss these projects today. And I want you to be aware that I'm not just coming in here, by the seat of my pants, but you have a 10% ancillary propagation without having any CEQA valuation of that. I recommend that if you do move forward with this project, you do not permit any of that CEQA, any of that ancillary propagation, unless, as I discussed with one of the commissioners earlier in the day, that be considered to be a portion of their grow space, and they at least goes under a mixed light jurisdiction. I think that's kind of a split the difference. And I feel that might be some irrigation is sorted from a permitted ground well on site. You had a person who had a certain qualification he was claiming. I assume you verified that qualification, and it was kind of implied he was a geologist, and if he is a licensed certified geologist who specializes in hydrology, then you are getting the thing. If he's a well driller, you do not have an expert on this topic. I did not even hear what I missed exactly, a little bit skipped out on me, what the actual, you have a 302,910 gallons per year to use. I didn't hear is that full storage. And again, we need to make sure, in my opinion, that no matter what, we're doing forbearance on a whole new process. So bucking an existing building, is that in Trinity County? Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And there's 4 generators on this site. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other public that would like to speak on this? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment. Bring it back to the commission. We're at 9:12, guys. So just keep that in mind. What are the thoughts?
I don't understand why there's an ordinance and then we don't want to follow it when it's inconvenient for someone. The 600-foot setback is there. It's not, unheard of to follow the ordinance and not just come in every single time going, well, we want to get around it. Like you said, it's a federal lands. There's more than just picnicking going on, in the forest, and there's runoff. There's all kinds of things that can occur that can have an adverse impact. It's pretty steep in that area. They talk about 75, but we talked about before that it was a 80-20s goal for, I thought, is what I heard previously for the solar, not 75. It just seems like we just slip or we're not consistent. And I think we should follow the ordinance. If it says 600 feet, then it needs to be 600 feet, and I would not approve this one.
Thank you, Peggy. Mike Newman, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair Bongio. I have a problem with it being so close to Six Rivers there. That's a third closer than what the ordinance has said, which has been published there. And I understand that this is a 1.0 plan to try and clean up existing illegal grows. But the ordinance does say 600 feet, and that's for several reasons, not just withstanding people use in the forest area and the federal lands. It's mostly for animals. And coupled with the part with Trinity County and such, and that generator being used for part of this farm here, that is in a different jurisdiction without seeing any input from Trinity County about that use. I understand the existing yurt and building not for cultivation is in Trinity County, part of the parking lot, and one of the generators, propane generators. So I have a hard time approving this permit.
Thanks, Mike. Thomas, you had your hand up.
So just to comment on the setbacks from the parks or state lands, the way I believe that comes from state law, if I remember right, it's 600 feet and it's public use area for public safety. And that's the way I understand that 600 foot was put into play. And so I don't have any concerns about the special permit for 200 feet. I think in one project in Willow Creek, maybe my second meeting, I think it was 100 to 200 foot setback that we approved, but maybe I'm wrong.
Anybody else?
If I could
just tangent back off of that, was there something done for owls and other species over there?
So if I could maybe respond a little bit to the setback, because I think it is important, and Commissioner Mulder grasped that entirely correct. It really is a 600-foot setback from active use areas. It was not intended to be for habitat values. When we process these permits, we do require biological reports. We look at the CNNDB. We look to see if there are spotted owls in the area. That's a completely separate process to ensure that habitat values and resource values are maintained. So the 600-foot setback was not intended to provide setbacks from habitat areas. It was intended to provide setbacks from public recreational use areas. And the ordinance itself provided the opportunity to apply for a special permit if it's not adjacent to a public use area, so that setback could be reduced. That's something that Ms. Acevedo did explain. It is very much akin to requiring a conditional use permit for billboard and allowing there to be a discretionary permit to approve something in a situation where you want to give it some consideration and allow that to be reviewed.
All right, thank you, Director. Noah, you have your hand up. You're muted.
Yes. I just wanted to say that I appreciate the explanation that we just got about the intention of the setback. And to me, that makes me feel, because I had actually, I had not been entirely clear that it was specifically tied to public human uses and not so much the wildlife and habitat values. So with that said, that concern is no longer much of a concern. That settles my concern for that. Sorry to get tongue-tied. I basically wanted to say I would be willing to make a motion to approve this if other commissioners are done speaking their thoughts on it.
Go ahead, Megan.
I would just like to make one more comment that the applicant did try to contact Trinity County Planning and Building Department regarding buildings on the Trinity County side sometime earlier in this year, and they never got back to the applicant. I think that they do not have the staff like we do to get back in a timely manner. So the applicant did try to contact Trinity County. I wanted to make that clear.
So Noah, I think you're up.
Okay. Yes. In that event, I will find that the commission has, I move that we find that the commission has considered the addendum to the adopted mitigated negative deck for the commercial medical marijuana land use ordinance as described by section 15164 of the state CEQA guidelines, and that we make all required findings for approval of the conditional use permit and special permit, and adopt the resolution approving the Eco Green Grow LLC CUP and special permit as recommended by staff, subject to the recommended conditions.
I would second that if you're willing for an addendum, that if for some reason it's found that allowing that generator use in Trinity County violates some CEQA, that generator use would have to be ceased immediately.
Noah, are you okay? You're muted.
Oops, sorry. I'm happy to include that in my motion as long as that doesn't confuse things too much for our staff. No? Okay.
Yes, perfect. We got it. We'll add a condition just indicating that we do want to see a clearance from Trinity County for the generator.
Great. Thanks. Then thank you, Thomas, for that suggested amendment. I accept that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mike? You're muted.
I'm looking at the requirements. Again, what was the time frame then for that removal of the generator that's over in Trinity County? Or is there not going to be removal on that?
It's a 2-year time frame, but you know, we can lower that time frame, lessen that time frame.
It's a propane generator, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm fine with that.
Any other discussion, any more discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask Laura for a roll call vote.
Alan Bonju,
No.
Thomas Mulder,
Yes.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
Mike Newman,
No.
Peggy O'Neill,
No.
Brian Mitchell,
Yes.
Melanie McCaver,
Yes.
Motion carries. The project is approved 4-3 vote. Thank you. Okay, so we have just a couple minutes left, and we have a housekeeping to take care of. We have items number 4 and number 14 on the consent agenda that we will need to continue to the next meeting. Or
could we continue those to next week to August 12th, since we're already having a special meeting?
Okay, so we need a motion to continue items number 4 and item number 14 to the next meeting, which is the 12th.
The 12th.
12th.
So moved.
Question?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Those were on consent.
Yes.
Can't we just vote on those now?
No, they were pulled from consent.
Oh, they were pulled.
They were items that were pulled, and we didn't get to them. Okay. So we had a motion. Did we have a second?
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just the discussion that I need to let you know, I unfortunately will not be available for the August 12th meeting. I'm still happy to make this, change for the vote.
Hope you're having fun.
I'm so sorry. I am. It's a long planned vacation, and I should have mentioned it last time when it came up.
Have fun. Good job.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Laura, roll call vote. please.
Alan Bongio,
Yes.
Thomas Mulder,
Yes.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
Mike Newman,
Yes.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Ryan Mitchell,
Yes.
Melanie McCaver,
Yes.
Motion carries unanimous. Anything any commissioners want to talk about or anything before we finish?
I do.
Director has something to say.
I do. The Planning Commission had asked to go back to meeting in person. And we were working on scheduling that for the August 19th meeting. But in light of the recent dramatic increase in the number of cases, I made the decision not to advertise the meeting to be in person. It still would be very hard to have 100 people or 200 people in this room, social distancing and doing all of that. So hopefully things will change soon and we can go back to meeting in person. But while we are seeing 30 to 70 or 80 new cases a day, it's really hard to justify putting people at that kind of risk. I think the board is meeting in a special meeting tomorrow to readdress whether they will return to meeting in person also. So for the time being, unfortunately, we will continue to meet via Zoom.
All right. Thank you, Director. Anything from any commission? All right. Seeing nothing, we're adjourned. Have a great next week, guys. See you soon.
All right. Take care, all.
Good night.